Republican pollsters have been taking heat for their terrible predictions when it came to Mitt Romney and when it came to Eric Cantor. Joining me today to discuss what is going on with these pollsters is Kristen Soltis Anderson. She is the co-founder of Echelon Insights. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what exactly is going on? Why does it seem as though Republican pollsters are always so far off the mark?
So in the last couple of elections, a big problem has been making sure you're asking the right people who they plan to vote for. A lot of the polls that have sort of gotten Republican pollsters in trouble have either sampled too many Republicans, they haven't sampled enough voters who are African American or Latino, and that's led the polls to appear a little too positive for Republican candidates. In the case of the Cantor race, there was really only one or two polls, and they were taken a few weeks before Election Day, so a lot can change, particularly in a low turnout election like we saw with Eric Cantor. And there, who the pollsters were calling on the phone and saying, "Who are you voting for?" was not necessarily representative of who wound up voting on Election Day. So the sampling issues are the really big problem that a lot of pollsters have been dealing with in getting accurate results.
Why does it seem like this is just a Republican problem, though? It doesn't seem as though Democrats suffer from this as much as we are suffering from it, the Republican Party.
So I think there are two things at work. One of them is that Democrats have been, at least up until now, really far ahead of Republicans in a lot of campaign technology. So they'll have analytics teams who use really large sample surveys and a lot of data to figure out who they think is actually going to vote. And then that information helps the pollster make good choices. Unfortunately for Republicans, that hasn't really been the case. The pollster kind of operates independently, and if there's an analytics team, sometimes the two don't really talk or work together, and I think that's something that the right needs to get better about doing. But the other thing is that if you think about what the bias is there, Democrats sort of assume that the electorate is going to be changing dramatically demographically in coming years. They've been focused a lot on activating field networks that will turn out new voters, get new voters registered. So they were more attuned to how the electorate was changing, while Republicans assumed, well, the election of Barack Obama that one time, the second time around, it won't look the same. The electorate will look a little bit different. And that kind of bias away from accepting the big changes in the electorate allowed Republicans to buy their own numbers instead of agreeing more with the Democrats' picture.
And I know you just started Echelon Insights. It's brand new. Explain to me what makes Echelon different from all the other consulting firms that occupy DC and take tons of money from politicians and candidates. What are you guys doing differently?
So what we're trying to do differently is to merge a lot of different data into one comprehensive picture of what's going on out there. So instead of just one survey where you're calling 600 people during dinner time and asking them questions about who they want to vote for. We think you can do that, but you can use new tools to do that, online tools to do that, as well as telephone tools. And you can merge it with an analysis of what people are talking about online. Mm-hmm. Twitter is not a representative sample of the electorate by any stretch of the imagination. But there are interesting things you can learn about what activists are really interested in. What stories are the hot stories in this particular media market for this week that can be really useful to someone who wants to break through the news cycle. So we think there's a whole bunch of data out there, whether it's consumer data, voter file analysis, doing really high-end public opinion research, or digital intelligence, that all should be looked at in the same bucket instead of being broken up across 5 or 6 different consultants.
And that's what a lot of the Republican candidates and politicians are doing. They're sort of stuck in that mode of thinking where everything's sort of broken up. How have people responded to Echelon strategies? Have they been welcoming? Because I know it's hard when someone is set in their ways to change that. Are Republicans welcoming towards your new technique and strategy?
We've been very pleasantly surprised by the great reception that we've received. That a lot of folks are saying, we've been waiting for somebody to fill this space in the market, and we're really glad you came along. The big challenge will be, by being data-driven, it means the opposite of we're going to go with the highest paid person's opinion. And there are a lot of folks that make a lot of money off of being the highest paid person who gives their opinion on a campaign.
Yeah.
And if you're letting the data drive you, then that's, you're giving up a little bit of your own personal control. You're giving up being driven by gut instinct. And so while we've had a really great reception to the idea, a lot of folks interested in working with us, I suspect, that there will be tension and friction along the way, as any change is tough, and trying to get people to look at campaigning and looking at communications in a new way will certainly have challenges along the way.
And just looking towards 2016, do you think it's possible that there will be a Democratic candidate that won't be Hillary Clinton? And if so, who do you think it'd be?
Gosh, on the Democratic side, if Hillary doesn't run, who do they have? If you look at these polls, Hillary's lead is so enormous that I have seen polls where, if beyond Hillary, the options of someone else or none of the above get higher percentage of voters than Joe Biden, than Martin O'Malley, than a lot of these other candidates that would be the Democratic nominee if Hillary doesn't run. So if she has a lot of strengths, but also a lot of weaknesses, but she is really the only game in town for Democrats.
And what about Republicans? Does it seem like anyone is, has a shoe-in, or?
So I think it's an insanely wide open field at this point. And, people always say, they said last time it was a wide open field, but you still kind of had Mitt Romney in that he'd run before, he had this structure. Same thing with McCain in '08. This time, it is a completely open field. And there are a lot of great candidates that I think represent unique flavors of conservatism, all of which I'm very excited to see hash it out and debate their views on a debate stage.
Likewise. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And talking with me. For PJ TV, I'm Michelle Fields. Thanks so much for watching.